The trustee period in Georgia began when King George II gave permission to establish the colony in 1732. For the first 21 years of Georgia's colonial history, a group of trustees governed the colony. A trustee is someone who oversees property on behalf of someone else. Georgia's trustees managed the colony on behalf of England and its ruler during this period, which was King George II. The king granted James Oglethorpe a charter, which is written permission to begin an English colony. The colony was named Georgia after King George. Before Georgia became a British colony, there was tension between the British and Spanish over the land. This tension increased after the neighboring area of South Carolina became a British colony in 1670. Spain maintained control of Florida. The land between South Carolina and Florida remained virtually unclaimed by Europeans. However, the original boundaries of South Carolina included the land between the Savannah and Altamaha rivers. This land eventually belonged to the Georgia colony. As Oglethorpe received the charter, he promised that silk, dyes, wine, spices, and semi-tropical fruit would be sent from Georgia back to England. Few debtors, former prisoners, or working poor ever made it to Georgia during its early settlement. Georgia's first settlers were given land, tools, and food. They promised to defend the colony from invaders and to grow trees that would attract silkworms. Between 114 and 125 settlers sailed from England on the ship Anne in 1732. Oglethorpe befriended Tomochichi, chief of the Yamacraw Indians, who led the settlers to Yamacraw Bluff overlooking the Savannah River. This became the first settlement of the new Georgia colony. Oglethorpe and two other surveyors designed the city of Savannah and built it along the Savannah River to facilitate shipping. The streets formed several squares that were divided into blocks called tithings and wards. The center of each square was for social, political, and religious gatherings. All but 3 of Oglethorpe's original squares exist in Savannah today. The new colonists arrived in Georgia. However, Catholics were not allowed to settle in Georgia under the charter signed by King George II. 40 original settlers died in the first year. In 1733, 42 Jews were allowed to settle in Georgia, including a much-needed doctor. In 1733, a group of German Protestants from Salzburg arrived and settled a town near Ebenezer, about 25 miles from Savannah. 3 years later, they moved to Red Bluff and settled New Ebenezer. Oglethorpe and Chief Tomochichi returned from a trip in England in 1736 with 300 more settlers, including German Protestants from Salzburg and Saxony. Religious leaders, John and Charles Wesley, also arrived in Georgia. Regulations enforced by Oglethorpe did not allow rum trade, buying large tracts of land, or the use of slave labor. South Carolina used slave labor to successfully grow rice, tobacco, cotton on large plantations. Farmers in Georgia wanted the same success that South Carolina farmers had. Many Georgians moved to places in the colony where they could basically live as they wished. In 1742, Georgians were allowed to buy and sell rum. Slavery was introduced in 1750, and the colony named for King George II was changing. In 1739, the War of Jenkins' Ear broke out between Great Britain and Spain. Oglethorpe organized an army of about 2,000 men with plans to capture Spanish forts in Florida. Spain responded and forced the Georgians, South Carolinians, and their Indian allies to retreat to St. Simon's Island. The Battle of Bloody Marsh in 1742 caused the Spanish to flee from Georgia, marking the end of Spanish threats. Georgia's southern border was protected. Oglethorpe left the Georgia colony for England in 1743 and never returned. 3 different men served as president of the Georgia colony from the time Oglethorpe left the colony until 1754. William Stevenson, Henry Parker, and Patrick Graham. In 1752, 1 year before the initial 21-year charter was to expire, the trustees returned Georgia to the authority of King George II. In its first 20 years as a colony, Georgia's population grew to 5,500 people, of which one-third were slaves. Protestants from Europe found safe haven in Georgia. Treaties with Native Americans and the victory over the Spanish settlers in Florida provided security to the Georgia colonists. Some of the early Georgia colony accomplishments included the Bethesda Orphans' Home, which was established in Ebenezer. This house later became the home and school where many of Georgia's early leaders were educated. The Methodist Church was founded by John and Charles Wesley. The first Sunday school in America was established by these same Wesley brothers. A successful court system was established and maintained, and women at this time were able to inherit property.